I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now and pay very close attention to this. Because what happened on the night of December 14th in Budapest, Hungary, is not just another protest story you scroll past on your phone. This is the moment when Vladimir Putin's carefully constructed house of cards in Europe began to collapse. And I mean genuinely, structurally, catastrophically collapse. For years, and I mean years, Putin has been building what many analysts thought was an impregnable network of political allies scattered strategically across Europe. These were leaders who would reliably block sanctions against Russia. Leaders who would systematically slow down aid packages to Ukraine. Leaders who would consistently carry water for Moscow while sitting comfortably at the European decision-making table. And at the absolute center of that entire network stood one man above all others, Viktor Orbán, the Prime Minister of Hungary. Tonight, that man is watching his entire political career burn to the ground. Let me paint this picture for you because the images coming out of Budapest are absolutely extraordinary. Hundreds of thousands of Hungarians. And when I say hundreds of thousands, I mean numbers that haven't been seen in that country since the fall of communism flooded the streets of their capital city, carrying torches, not metaphorical torches representing some abstract idea of change, actual, physical, burning torches, flames lighting up the December night sky, ready to burn down what they see as 14 years of corruption, authoritarianism, and shameless collaboration with Moscow. The epicenter of this eruption was Kossuth Square, directly in front of the Hungarian Parliament building. Picture this scene, the Grand Parliament building, one of the most iconic structures in all of Europe, completely surrounded by a human sea stretching as far as the eye can see. Voices unified in a single thundering message that echoed through those ancient streets. Enough is enough. We are done. Resign. And here's where this story gets really fascinating, because leading this historic charge is a man named Péter Magyar. Now, Magyar isn't some outside agitator that Orban can easily dismiss with his well-practiced propaganda playbook. He's not a foreign-backed opposition figure that state media can paint as a Western puppet. No, Magyar is a former insider, a bureaucrat who spent years working within the very system he's now dismantling. He watched firsthand how the media manipulation machinery operated. He observed precisely how the judiciary got pressured into compliance. He understood the regime's internal codes, its vulnerabilities, its secrets. He knows exactly where the bodies are buried. And now, methodically and relentlessly, he's digging every single one of them up for the entire world to see. While those torches were illuminating the Budapest skyline, something equally significant was happening simultaneously in the digital realm. The global hacker collective Anonymous publicly declared open warfare on Orban's government and his ruling Fidesz party. This wasn't merely a website takedown operation designed to embarrass some bureaucrats. They started systematically leaking internal data, confidential communications, information that the regime had desperately fought to keep buried in darkness. Consider the strategic implications of that moment. You have hundreds of thousands of citizens physically surrounding the seat of government, demanding change. At the exact same time, hackers are exposing the regime's carefully guarded secrets to millions around the world. The traditional authoritarian playbook of controlling information flow has been completely shattered. The strategy of simply waiting out protesters until they get tired and go home cannot possibly work under these circumstances. The Hungarian government's media empire desperately tried to censor images of the protests or dismiss the crowds as small, marginal, irrelevant groups. But here's the fundamental problem with that approach. In our modern era, you simply cannot hide a sea of burning torches from smartphone cameras. Social media showed the entire world the undeniable truth in real time, and no amount of state propaganda could counter those images. Now, If you're finding this coverage valuable and you want to stay informed about these historic developments, take just a moment to hit that subscribe button and like this video. It genuinely helps us continue bringing you this kind of in-depth analysis when these crucial moments happen. Here's what elevates this story from significant to absolutely historic in its implications. Just 1 week before the Budapest protests exploded into the streets, something remarkably similar occurred in Bulgaria. Pro-Russian political forces there suffered a devastating, unexpected setback. Analysts called it a quiet but deep political earthquake. What happened in Hungary wasn't merely an aftershock of that Bulgarian tremor. Hungary was the main seismic event. When you step back and examine the map of Europe through Moscow's eyes, Putin's nightmare scenario is unfolding in real time before him. His carefully cultivated network of European allies, the politicians strategically positioned to veto sanctions, delay critical aid packages, and manufacture division within NATO and the European Union, that entire network is systematically falling apart, piece by piece. Viktor Orbán represented far more than just another friendly foreign leader for Putin. He was Moscow's veto card inside the European Union itself. Whenever Brussels attempted to take meaningful action against Russian aggression, Orbán was reliably there to slow things down, water proposals down, or block them entirely. He functioned as Moscow's Trojan horse, positioned inside the Western alliance, working from within to undermine collective action. But a leader desperately fighting for his political survival in his own capital city cannot simultaneously pound his fist on tables in Brussels. That carefully accumulated leverage has evaporated overnight. On that very same night, as those protests were reaching their thunderous peak in Budapest, Putin himself addressed the world. His message was telling in its defensiveness. He essentially argued that all the economic problems Europeans are currently experiencing, the hardship, the inflation, the difficulties, none of that is Russia's fault. Those problems, he insisted, result from years of mistakes and greed by European elites themselves. Consider the remarkable timing of that statement. Putin is watching his most reliable, most strategically valuable European partner get surrounded by hundreds of thousands of torch-wielding protesters demanding immediate resignation. And his response is to go on international television and desperately deflect blame onto everyone except himself and his policies. This is precisely what political desperation looks like when broadcast to the world. For years, Russia wielded energy as its primary geopolitical weapon across Europe. Natural gas supplies, oil exports, the implicit threat of cutting off heat during brutal winter months. That's how Moscow kept countries like Hungary and Bulgaria in its orbit of influence. Accept our interference in your politics, or your people will freeze. But something fundamental has shifted in the European political landscape. Bulgaria moved decisively toward energy diversification, reducing dependence on Russian supplies. They started reclaiming control over Russian-operated refineries within their borders. And now, Hungary's public is sending an unmistakable message. We are tired of cheap gas that comes with the unacceptable price tag of corruption and authoritarianism permanently attached. Hungarian citizens looked at their empty refrigerators, at inflation reaching historic levels, at their declining standard of living, and they made a collective calculation. The true cost of remaining in Putin's orbit has become far too high to bear any longer. Let me explain precisely what the stakes are in this moment. Hungary represented Russia's last remaining land bridge, extending into Central Europe and the Balkans. If Orban falls from power or even weakens significantly, Moscow loses its intelligence bases, its diplomatic maneuvering room, its ability to influence decisions at the very heart of Europe. We are potentially witnessing Russia being pushed into a state of complete international isolation. Not just economic sanctions, not just diplomatic condemnation, actual pariah state status comparable to North Korea's position in the international community. This ripple effect will not stop at Hungary's borders. Leaders in Slovakia and elsewhere who have followed similar pro-Russia political paths are watching the images streaming out of Budapest with genuine, visceral fear. If Viktor Orbán, the man who seemed politically untouchable, who accumulated and wielded absolute power for 14 consecutive years, can be shaken to his foundations by his own people's outrage, then no leader following that playbook is safe anymore. What unfolded on December 14th transcended ordinary political protest. It represented a strategic breaking point in European geopolitics. The moment when European citizens collectively decided that cooperation with Russia isn't merely a debatable foreign policy question, it's fundamentally a corruption question, a national security question, a question of basic democratic accountability. Péter Magyar's movement isn't offering Hungarians just an opportunity to express anger in the streets. It's offering a genuine governing alternative, transparent institutions, European democratic standards, actual accountability for those in power. Everything the Orban system was specifically designed to prevent. And here's the crucial element that should deprive Putin of sleep indefinitely. This revolution didn't originate from outside Hungary. There was no foreign intervention to blame. No Western intelligence operation that Russian propaganda can spin into a conspiracy narrative. This movement came entirely from within, from ordinary Hungarians who simply decided they had suffered enough. When a population itself rejects the Putin playbook, there's no effective countermove available in the authoritarian toolkit. You cannot sanction your own citizens into submission. You cannot hack away genuine public outrage. You cannot veto hundreds of thousands of burning torches illuminating the night sky. Tonight, as those flames in Budapest gradually fade with the dawn, a new geopolitical reality is crystallizing. Putin's fortress in Europe isn't merely cracking under pressure, it's crumbling into rubble. The Allies have gone silent. The leverage has evaporated completely, and Moscow, buried under the mounting rubble of the catastrophic war it initiated, finds itself more isolated than at any point since the darkest days of the Cold War. The walls have fallen. The great game for influence in Europe is over for Russia. And every single one of us watching tonight is witnessing history being written in real time. That's all for tonight. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.